In the spring of 1988, Michael Carter, a seasoned cave guide known for his fearless explorations and deep knowledge of the Appalachian Mountains, prepared for what would be his most ambitious expedition yet, into the mysterious depths of Blackwater Cave, a recently discovered section of the vast underground network that stretched beneath the rugged terrain of West Virginia. Michael had spent over 15 years leading groups through the intricate and often perilous cave systems that wove beneath the Appalachians, earning him a reputation as one of the most skilled and reliable guides in the region, among both amateur adventurers and professional spelunkers. His expertise in underground navigation, combined with an almost supernatural ability to read the subtle signs and dangers of subterranean environments, had made him the go-to guide for the most challenging and unexplored cave systems in the area. This particular expedition was different from his usual guided tours. Michael planned to explore a newly discovered section of Blackwater Cave that local miners had accidentally breached while working a nearby coal seam, revealing what appeared to be a vast chamber system that had remained sealed for potentially thousands of years. Accompanied by his closest friends and fellow explorers, Sarah Thompson, a geologist specializing in cave formations, David Lee, an expert technical climber and rope specialist, and Emily Rogers, a skilled photographer and cave mapping specialist. Michael set out on May 15th with meticulous preparation and high hopes for groundbreaking discoveries. The team was equipped with the most advanced caving gear available in 1988, including carbide headlamps, backup electric lighting systems, military-grade communication radios, climbing ropes rated for extreme conditions, and comprehensive safety equipment designed to handle any emergency that might arise in the hostile underground environment. Each member brought unique skills essential for the expedition. Sarah's geological expertise would help them understand the cave's formation and identify potential hazards. David's climbing skills would allow them to navigate vertical passages and technical sections, while Emily's photography and mapping abilities would document their discoveries for the scientific community. As they descended into the darkness through the narrow entrance that had been blasted open by the miners, the familiar coolness of the underground world enveloped them, and the silence became profound, broken only by the distant sound of dripping water and the occasional echo of their movements through the limestone corridors. Before continuing this story, tell us in the comments what country and city you're listening to this story from. The initial phase of the expedition proceeded smoothly as Michael led his team through the familiar upper passages of Blackwater Cave, following established routes before branching off into the newly discovered sections that promised to reveal secrets hidden for millennia beneath the Appalachian Mountains. For the first 6 hours, the team made excellent progress, documenting fascinating geological formations, underground streams, and chambers of breathtaking beauty that had never been seen by human eyes, with Emily capturing stunning photographs of crystalline formations and Sarah taking detailed notes on the cave's unique mineral compositions and structural characteristics. Michael's expertise shone as he navigated the complex network of passages with confidence, reading the subtle signs in the rock formations and air currents that indicated safe routes versus potentially dangerous areas where unstable rocks or sudden drops could pose fatal threats to unwary explorers. The team maintained regular radio contact with their surface support crew, led by Michael's longtime friend and fellow guide Robert Martinez, who monitored their progress from a command post established near the cave entrance and was prepared to coordinate rescue operations if needed. However, at approximately 3:30 p.m., during what should have been a routine check-in, Michael's voice came through the radio with an unusual tone of excitement and urgency. "We found something incredible down here. There's a passage behind what looked like a solid wall, and it opens into something that doesn't match any of our maps. I'm going to investigate alone while the others secure the area. We'll report back in 30 minutes. Tower." Those were the last words anyone would hear from Michael Carter for the next 5 years. When the 30-minute deadline passed without contact, Sarah, David, and Emily immediately began searching the area where they had last seen Michael, calling his name and systematically exploring every possible route he might have taken. but they found no trace of their friend or any indication of where he might have gone. The passage he had mentioned was nowhere to be found, despite their thorough examination of every wall and crevice in the chamber where they had been working. After 2 hours of frantic searching, the team made the difficult decision to return to the surface and alert the authorities, knowing that a full-scale rescue operation would be needed to have any hope of finding Michael in the vast underground labyrinth. Robert Martinez immediately contacted the West Virginia Cave Rescue Team, the state police, and the National Speleological Society, initiating what would become one of the most extensive cave rescue operations in Appalachian history. Involving over 200 volunteers and lasting for 3 weeks of intensive searching through every known passage and chamber in the Blackwater Cave system. The massive search operation that followed Michael's disappearance mobilized resources from across the eastern United States, bringing together expert cave rescue teams, professional spelunkers, military personnel trained in underground operations, and volunteers from the tight-knit caving community who refused to abandon one of their own. Teams worked around the clock in rotating shifts, systematically exploring every passage, chamber, and crevice in the known sections of Blackwater Cave, using advanced equipment including underwater diving gear to search flooded passages, sensitive listening devices to detect any sounds that might indicate Michael's location, and even experimental ground-penetrating radar to identify previously unknown chambers or passages that might not appear on existing maps. Despite the heroic efforts of hundreds of dedicated searchers who risked their own lives navigating dangerous passages and unstable areas, no trace of Michael was found. No equipment, no clothing fragments, no footprints in the soft cave mud, and most puzzling of all, no sign of the mysterious passage he had described in his final radio transmission. The official search was eventually called off after 3 weeks, with authorities concluding that Michael had likely fallen into an unmapped vertical shaft or underground river, and that his body had been carried away by water flow to an inaccessible location deep within the mountain. However, Sarah, David, and Emily refused to accept this explanation, convinced that their friend's disappearance was connected to whatever he had discovered in that final moment before vanishing, and they began organizing their own private search efforts that would continue sporadically over the following years. The 3 friends, bound together by their shared loss and determination to find answers, formed an unofficial investigation team that met regularly to plan new search strategies, analyze cave maps for overlooked possibilities, and interview anyone who might have information about unusual activities or discoveries in the Blackwater Cave area. They spent countless weekends exploring remote sections of the cave system, always hoping to find the mysterious passage that Michael had mentioned, or any clue that might explain his disappearance, while also dealing with their own grief and the growing skepticism of family members and friends who urged them to accept Michael's death and move on with their lives. Local newspapers covered the story extensively for several months, with headlines like "Cave Guide Vanishes Without Trace" and "Mystery Deepens in Appalachian Cave Disappearance." But as time passed and no new developments emerged, media attention faded, and the case gradually became just another unsolved mystery in the region's folklore. The 3 friends persisted in their search efforts, driven by loyalty to Michael's memory and an unshakable belief that the truth about his fate was hidden somewhere in the depths of Blackwater Cave, waiting to be discovered by those persistent enough to keep looking when others had given up hope. 5 years after Michael's disappearance, on a crisp autumn morning in October 1993, Sarah Thompson, David Lee, and Emily Rogers embarked on what they had decided would be their final systematic search of Blackwater Cave. Having exhausted nearly every known passage and chamber in their relentless quest for answers about their friend's fate, the trio had evolved from grieving friends into experienced cave explorers in their own right, having spent hundreds of hours underground over the past 5 years, developing skills and knowledge that rivaled those of professional spelunkers, while maintaining their unwavering determination to solve the mystery that had consumed their lives. Armed with more advanced equipment than had been available during the original search, including improved lighting systems, digital cameras, GPS devices adapted for underground use, and sophisticated mapping software, they planned to conduct one final comprehensive survey of the area where Michael had last been seen, hoping that their accumulated experience and better technology might reveal something that had been missed during the chaotic initial search efforts. As they descended into the familiar darkness of Blackwater Cave, each carrying their own emotional burden of 5 years of unanswered questions and fading hope, they moved with the practiced efficiency of a team that had worked together through countless underground expeditions, their movements coordinated and purposeful, despite the weight of knowing this might be their last chance to find the truth. The cave seemed different somehow on this particular day, as if the mountain itself was preparing to reveal secrets that had been hidden for far too long. And the three friends felt a strange mixture of anticipation and dread as they approached the chamber where Michael had made his final radio transmission. It was David who first noticed something unusual about the rock formation that had been the focus of so many previous searches. A subtle difference in the way shadows fell across what had always appeared to be a solid limestone wall, suggesting that there might be a hidden opening that had somehow escaped detection during years of careful examination. Using their improved lighting equipment and approaching from a different angle than they had tried before, the team discovered what appeared to be a narrow crack in the rock face, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through, concealed behind a natural limestone curtain that had made it virtually invisible from most viewing angles. Sarah's geological training immediately told her that this was not a natural formation, but rather an artificially widened passage that had been carefully disguised to appear as part of the cave's natural structure, suggesting that someone had deliberately created a hidden entrance for reasons that could only be sinister. With hearts pounding from excitement and apprehension, the three friends prepared to enter the passage that might finally provide answers to the mystery that had haunted them for 5 long years. Beyond the concealed entrance, Sarah, David, and Emily discovered a hidden chamber unlike anything they had encountered in their years of cave exploration. A vast underground space that showed clear evidence of human modification and habitation, with carved stone walls, artificial lighting fixtures powered by an unknown source, and most shocking of all, clear signs that this secret area had been actively used within recent years. The chamber was filled with an eclectic collection of artifacts that seemed to span centuries. Ancient stone tablets covered with indecipherable symbols, medieval manuscripts preserved in waterproof containers, scientific instruments from various historical periods, and modern equipment including computers, communication devices, and laboratory apparatus that suggested ongoing research activities. At the center of this underground sanctuary, the friends found Michael's personal effects: his helmet, backpack, and most importantly, his detailed expedition journal, arranged on a stone altar alongside other items that appeared to be offerings or tributes from previous visitors to this hidden place. Michael's journal, when examined under their powerful LED lights, revealed entries that had been written after his disappearance, describing his discovery of what he called the Archive of the Guardians, a secret repository of knowledge maintained by a mysterious organization that had been operating in the Appalachian cave systems for over 2 centuries. According to Michael's increasingly frantic handwriting, he had been captured by members of this organization after stumbling upon their hidden chamber, and had been held prisoner while they decided whether he could be trusted with their secrets or whether he posed too great a threat to their continued secrecy. The journal entries described an ancient society dedicated to preserving forbidden knowledge and artifacts that mainstream academia and government authorities would either suppress or exploit for dangerous purposes, with the cave system serving as their primary stronghold and storage facility for materials deemed too sensitive for the outside world. Michael wrote about meeting elderly scholars who had devoted their entire lives to cataloging and protecting these treasures, living in complete isolation from the surface world and maintaining their organization through a combination of inherited wealth, careful recruitment of suitable individuals, and, when necessary, the elimination of those who threatened their secrecy. The most chilling entries in the journal described Michael's growing realization that he would never be allowed to leave the underground complex alive, as his knowledge of the organization's existence and location made him an unacceptable security risk, and his desperate attempts to find an escape route while documenting everything he could about the Guardians and their activities, in the hope that someone would eventually find his journal and expose the truth about their operations. As Sarah, David, and Emily delved deeper into Michael's journal and explored the hidden chamber more thoroughly, they began to understand the true scope and danger of the organization that had claimed their friend's life, discovering evidence of a conspiracy that reached far beyond a simple secret society hiding in Appalachian caves. The journal revealed that the Guardians maintained a network of similar facilities throughout the eastern United States, connected by natural and artificial underground passages that allowed them to move people and materials without detection by surface authorities, and that their membership included influential individuals from academia, government, and industry who used their positions to protect the organization's interests and recruit new members. Michael had documented meetings with Guardians who claimed to possess knowledge of advanced technologies, historical events that contradicted official records, and scientific discoveries that had been suppressed to prevent their misuse by governments or corporations, painting a picture of an organization that saw itself as humanity's protector against its own destructive tendencies. However, the Friends also found evidence that the Guardians were not the benevolent protectors they claimed to be, but rather a paranoid and increasingly violent cult that had murdered numerous individuals over the years to protect their secrets, with Michael being only the latest victim in a long line of disappeared explorers, researchers, and journalists who had gotten too close to the truth. The chamber contained a grim collection of personal effects from previous victims, each carefully cataloged and preserved as trophies of the organization's ruthless efficiency in eliminating threats, and the Friends realized with growing horror that they had stumbled into the same trap that had claimed Michael's life. Their discovery was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps echoing through the hidden passages, and the three friends quickly realized that their presence in the chamber had been detected by the Guardians, who were now moving to contain this new security breach just as they had contained Michael 5 years earlier. Working frantically, Sarah, David, and Emily gathered as much evidence as possible, photographing documents, copying journal entries, and collecting small artifacts that could serve as proof of the organization's existence, while preparing for what they knew would be a desperate fight for survival against opponents who had decades of experience in making people disappear without a trace. The approaching footsteps grew louder, accompanied by voices speaking in hushed tones about containment protocols and permanent solutions, confirming the Friends' worst fears about the fate that awaited them if they were captured by the Guardians. With their hearts racing and adrenaline surging through their systems, the three friends prepared to make a run for the concealed entrance, knowing that their only chance of survival lay in reaching the surface and exposing the truth about the organization before they could be silenced forever. The confrontation with the Guardians unfolded in the shadowy depths of the hidden chamber as three robed figures emerged from passages that the Friends hadn't even noticed, moving with the silent efficiency of individuals who had spent years navigating the underground complex and dealing with unwanted intruders. The leader of the group, an elderly man with piercing eyes and a voice that carried the authority of decades of command, calmly informed Sarah, David, and Emily that they had violated sacred space and compromised security protocols that have protected humanity's most dangerous secrets for over 2 centuries, making it clear that their discovery would not be allowed to reach the surface world. As the Guardians moved to surround them, David used his technical climbing skills to create a diversion by triggering a controlled rockfall that blocked one of the passages and gave the Friends a brief opportunity to escape toward the concealed entrance they had used to enter the chamber. The chase through the underground labyrinth became a deadly game of cat and mouse, with the Guardians using their intimate knowledge of the cave system to try to cut off escape routes, while the three friends relied on their years of exploration experience and superior physical conditioning to stay ahead of their pursuers. Emily's photography equipment proved unexpectedly valuable, as she used the bright flashes from her camera to temporarily blind their attackers and create confusion in the darkness, while Sarah's geological knowledge helped them identify unstable areas where they could trigger cave-ins to block passages behind them. The journal and artifacts they had collected became precious cargo that they protected at all costs, knowing that this evidence was the only way to ensure that Michael's death and the deaths of countless other victims would not be in vain, and that the truth about the Guardians' crimes would finally be exposed to the world. During their harrowing escape, David was injured when a Guardian's thrown knife grazed his shoulder, but he continued moving despite the pain, driven by the knowledge that capture would mean certain death for all three of them. The friends' superior knowledge of the cave's natural passages, gained through 5 years of intensive exploration, ultimately proved decisive as they reached areas where the Guardians' artificial modifications had not extended, allowing them to use routes that their pursuers could not easily follow. After what felt like hours of desperate flight through narrow passages and treacherous climbs, Sarah, David, and Emily finally emerged from the cave entrance into the blessed daylight of the surface world, gasping for breath and clutching the evidence that would transform their personal tragedy into a crusade for justice. Behind them, they could hear the frustrated shouts of the Guardians echoing from the depths, but they knew that their enemies would not dare to pursue them into the open where witnesses might see and authorities might become involved. The aftermath of their escape from Blackwater Cave marked the beginning of a new and equally dangerous phase in the friends' quest for justice, as they quickly discovered that the Guardians' influence extended far beyond their underground stronghold and into the very institutions they had hoped would help them expose the truth. When Sarah, David, and Emily initially approached local law enforcement with their evidence and testimony about Michael's murder and the secret organization operating beneath the mountains, they were met with skepticism, bureaucratic delays, and what appeared to be deliberate obstruction by officials who seemed more interested in discrediting their story than investigating their claims. Several attempts to interest journalists in their discoveries resulted in reporters who initially showed enthusiasm suddenly backing away from the story, often citing pressure from their editors or concerns about the credibility of sources, suggesting that the Guardians had contacts in the media who could suppress unwanted publicity. The friends realized that they were fighting an enemy with resources and connections that they had underestimated, and that their evidence alone would not be sufficient to overcome the organization's ability to manipulate official channels and control information flow. Undeterred by these setbacks, the three friends adopted a different strategy, using Emily's photography skills and David's technical expertise to create a comprehensive documentation of their discoveries, including detailed photographs of the hidden chamber, copies of historical documents they had found, and a complete transcription of Michael's journal entries that provided first-hand testimony about the Guardians' activities. They began reaching out to independent researchers, conspiracy theorists, and alternative media outlets that were less susceptible to mainstream pressure, gradually building a network of allies who were willing to help them spread their story despite the risks involved. Sarah's scientific background proved invaluable in authenticating the artifacts they had recovered and providing expert analysis that supported their claims about the organization's long history and sophisticated operations. The friends also discovered that they were not alone in their fight against the Guardians, as their publicity efforts attracted contact from other individuals who had lost family members or friends to the organization over the years, creating a growing community of victims and survivors who shared information and resources in their common quest for justice. Through careful coordination and the use of secure communication methods, this informal network began to piece together a comprehensive picture of the Guardians' operations, identifying other cave systems and underground facilities where the organization maintained a presence, and documenting a pattern of disappearances and cover-ups that stretched back decades. The breakthrough in their campaign to expose the Guardians came when Emily's photographic evidence caught the attention of Dr. Margaret Chen, a renowned anthropologist and investigative journalist who specialized in uncovering historical conspiracies and had the academic credentials and media connections necessary to bring their story to a wider audience. Dr. Chen's involvement transformed their grassroots effort into a professional investigation that combined rigorous academic research with aggressive journalism, resulting in a series of articles published in major newspapers and magazines that finally brought the Guardian's crimes into the public spotlight. The publication of Michael's journal entries, accompanied by expert analysis of the artifacts and photographic evidence from the hidden chamber, created a media sensation that the organization could not suppress or discredit, forcing government authorities to launch official investigations into the disappearances and the illegal activities being conducted in the cave systems. Congressional hearings were convened to examine the extent of the Guardian's operations and their connections to government agencies, revealing a web of corruption and complicity that reached into the highest levels of federal law enforcement and intelligence services. Several high-ranking officials were forced to resign when their ties to the organization were exposed, and criminal charges were filed against dozens of individuals who had participated in or covered up the Guardian's activities over the years. The investigation also led to the discovery of additional underground facilities in other states, resulting in the rescue of several individuals who had been held prisoner by the organization and the recovery of thousands of historical artifacts and documents that had been stolen from museums, libraries, and private collections around the world. Sarah, David, and Emily found themselves thrust into the role of key witnesses in multiple criminal trials, their testimony helping to convict Guardian members and their accomplices on charges ranging from murder and kidnapping to theft of cultural artifacts and conspiracy to obstruct justice. The legal proceedings revealed the full scope of the organization's crimes, including the murders of at least 37 individuals over a period of 40 years, the theft of priceless historical artifacts worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and the systematic corruption of public officials who had been bribed or blackmailed into protecting the Guardian's interests. Michael Carter was officially recognized as a hero whose sacrifice had led to the exposure of one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in American history, and his name was added to memorials honoring law enforcement officers and civilians who had died in the line of duty while protecting the public from criminal threats. Today, more than 3 decades after Michael Carter's disappearance in the depths of Blackwater Cave, his legacy continues to inspire a new generation of explorers, investigators, and truth-seekers who refuse to accept official explanations when evidence suggests a more complex and disturbing reality. The Michael Carter Foundation, established by Sarah, David, and Emily with support from the families of other Guardian victims, provides funding for independent research into historical mysteries, supports the families of missing persons whose cases may involve organized criminal activity, and advocates for greater transparency in government operations that affect public safety. The Foundation also maintains the Michael Carter Memorial Cave Rescue Training Center, where volunteers learn the skills necessary to conduct safe and effective search and rescue operations in underground environments, ensuring that future disappearances will be met with more sophisticated and persistent investigation efforts than were available in 1988. Blackwater Cave itself has been transformed from a site of tragedy into a place of education and remembrance, with guided tours that tell the story of Michael's sacrifice and the friends who refused to give up their search for truth, inspiring visitors to consider their own responsibility to question authority and seek justice when confronted with evidence of wrongdoing. The hidden chamber where the Guardians once operated has been preserved as a historical site and research facility, where scholars study the recovered artifacts and documents to better understand the organization's methods and motivations, while also serving as a reminder of the dangers posed by secret societies that operate outside the bounds of democratic oversight and legal accountability. Sarah Thompson, now a respected professor of geology and cave science, continues to lead expeditions into unexplored cave systems around the world, always mindful of the lessons learned from her friend's disappearance, and committed to ensuring that the pursuit of knowledge never again becomes a justification for violence and secrecy. David Lee established a successful outdoor adventure company that specializes in safe and responsible cave exploration, training thousands of guides and explorers in the techniques and ethics necessary to protect both human life and fragile underground environments from the kind of exploitation and abuse that characterize the Guardian's operations. Emily Rogers became an award-winning documentary filmmaker whose work focuses on exposing corruption and criminal activity in remote and overlooked communities, using her skills and experience to give voice to victims who might otherwise be forgotten by mainstream media and law enforcement agencies. The three friends remain close, bound together by their shared experience and their ongoing commitment to honoring Michael's memory through their continued work in exploration, education, and advocacy for justice. Their story has been told in books, documentaries, and academic papers that examine the psychology of conspiracy, the importance of persistent investigation in solving cold cases, and the role that ordinary citizens can play in exposing criminal organizations that believe themselves to be above the law. Michael Carter's disappearance, which began as a personal tragedy for three friends who lost someone they loved, ultimately became a catalyst for positive change that has protected countless other lives and helped to ensure that the darkness of criminal conspiracy cannot hide forever from the light of truth and justice.